So, quick story as we get into this episode here.
God.
Almost a year ago, Andrew was moving, and I flew out to Arizona to help him with this move. Literally, like Andrew and I are no like there's a thing we fly across the country to hang out with each other for one night, for whatever it is. It's just what we
It
do.
was one night, huh? I forgot about
But went there, was helping him finish packing up and everything like that. He's like, "Oh, let's go get a coffee from Starbucks." We go to Starbucks. He's like, "Hey, I want a venti nitro," and they're like, "Oh, we don't do that because it's too much." He goes, "So can I get two of the largest one that you'll give me?" And the lady's like looking at him like, "Yeah, I guess that's fine." So I think it's two. What is it, grande 16 ounces or whatever that
Yeah,
that you
it was
get.
a Trenta.
So he pours both of them into a. He goes, "Can I get one in a venti?" He goes to pour the other one in there, and it's obviously not fitting. Well, he's three-quarters of the way through these two drinks. And for those of you that don't know Andrew, well, he is on the edge. Like he's naturally uh
I'm high strung. I'm high strung, Steve. I'm high
fair.
strung. I
he's
don't smoke. I don't do shrooms. I just fucking ride the anxiety.
so he's anxious as hell with this coffee. And I'm laughing because at this point in time I've already been off of my caffeine. But I think for one day, maybe an in person event, I'll go with a nitro and see how that goes. Um, we just need to make sure somebody there is capable of using a defibrillator, no CPR, and I should probably eat a little bit more. Like no always skip lunch type mentality pre this. So,
Oh,
um,
dog, got one.
but yeah, so today we are going to chat about not Andrew's caffeine potential issues and anxiety, but I think we're going to jam on some lead generation for coaches in 2024 as we see it. I think that's the actual conversation today. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're here to talk about being you and authentic and how that translates into getting the people that want to actually purchase the things that you had to sell. And obviously, you and Brandon have a wealth of experience in that specific domain. So, I'm really excited to get to ask the dumb questions today and have you guys obviously lead the majority of that conversation.
Well, I think when I think about like the base, right? We need to think of who we are, what we do, what the company represents, our mission, vision, values, if you will. And I'm gonna start with maybe the less sexy side of things. And Brandon, I'd love to just throw it over to you out of the gates. But the idea of branding, what the company stands for, what the goals are. Obviously, we're starting this and we're going through our branding process to an extent now. So when I say branding, or when a coach is thinking about branding what they're doing, what are the things that really come to mind for you in this?
Yeah, and for branding, and I feel like in a weird way that's almost turned into like a one of those buzzwords where it's like, what is your brand? And a lot of times, the first from what I've experienced, it's what is my color and my logo going to be? What's that? That's like the biggest premise. Like, what is the brand? But really, the brand is who you are, what your mission is, and what your goals are, and what you want to go and set out and do. And that, I think, is kind of lost with all of the what is the glitter and the glam of things. Like, oh well, uh, I had a buddy. He wanted to start a business. I'll call him out. It's a chia seed pudding business. Very, very, very lucrative business here at a farmer's markets. Um, but his big thing was getting a mascot before even getting a brand, the logo. So yeah, it was like, well, all the companies have it. So it's one of those words I feel like can get kind of lost in translation if you're not entirely it's kind of that vague. It can be vague, but yeah, I think it really is just being able to, when someone says the name Beyond the Pump, it's what comes to mind when you think of that company, and what comes to mind when you think about what they represent. And I think that's a really good way to understand what that branding is. And it's a lot easier to just say, well, we got a cool logo and we got cool colors, and this is our services, this is our brand. It's like, well, what is the underlining behind, what is the underlining behind even the logos? It's like, even with FedEx, I think they have the little arrow in between one of their letters to show the direction they're going. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. Amazon earlier on, I'm not sure if their logos have it now. They have an A through Z arrow with saying they sell everything from A to Z. So super cool with how that, even like their logos and their actual physical branding is representing what they also do as a company. And so it's a from my understanding, yeah, with experience and all that, it's just everything just coming together and being able to be the representation of what you are, from messaging, from logos, from your services, what your beliefs are and everything. But yeah, that's what I've seen, and some of the pitfalls I've seen as well, where it's like, oh, branding is my whatever Canva told me my template was. Those are my new brand colors. But
Yeah, everyone's like, "Oh, your branding guide," and I'm like, "Calm
yeah,
down." Like that's
yeah,
I'm like, I even find myself in that as I'm building this other coaching business and this consulting business of like, well, what does the colors need to be like? What and it'll definitely be paralyzing. But yeah, I love that. I have a question though in terms of Steve, when you think about branding, like that's obviously pretty conceptual, and you've established a lot of very successful brands, having acquired companies and stuff like that. Like, what's the business implication of having a meaningful brand in 2024?
So you have to do something well, no matter what you're doing. And what I mean by that is you have to tell a story. Your name can tell a story, your logo can tell a story, the branding itself overarching can tell a story. The landing page or email or Facebook group or whatever it is that you're doing can tell the story, but at some point in time a story needs to be told. The idea of Amazon, that A to Z, the smiley face, like you get happy when things are delivered to you. That's all something that was layered in there. And, you may not know that that's part of it, but subconsciously there's this smiley face thing going on with the logo. And over time, we're obviously talking about Amazon. We're probably not creating $1 trillion businesses through these conversations. So I realize that there is something different there, but at the end of the day, you have to tell a story. And when we think about the know, like, trust factor that we referenced in one of our prior episodes, you can increase the know, like, trust factor when people can relate to your brand, the story, the mission, vision, value, so to speak, that your branding and what you do represent. So from that perspective, it really comes down to what is it that we're wanting to portray, what do we want to put out there. So beyond the pump, right? If you look at our logo, there's a dumbbell on the top, and that dumbbell is meant to be fitness related in nature, but within that dumbbell you also see an upward arrow, and the idea is that we want to ascend above that. It's not just about the lift, it's not about just getting the pump in the gym, but rather more than that, the knowledge, the nutrition, the psychology, that four-legged stool that we've referenced before. But you'll also notice the BTP is slanted and leaning and going up into the right, which most of us will associate with growth, upward trajectory, and a movement in a direction that we all want to go. Those things are built in there intentionally, because now this might not hit any of you because it is new. It works for the three of us, and who knows, in 6 months, a year, we might have to redo this entire thing. But those are some of the elements within there that we're really thinking about. And the idea of going beyond the naming convention of we want to get to is really the big thing. So branding is that overall story, I'll say. Yes, your colors might play a role in there, the imagery, the font, like all of that stuff might play a role. But when I think of branding, it really comes down to the story. If I ask you who you are and what you do, and what people your company serves, what problems your services solve, that is really the story. How succinctly, directly, how well can I understand? Can you tell me that story? And that's a big piece. The logos and the colors and the websites and all that stuff, it plays a role in there, but it's not everything. My advice to most people is don't even worry about a website in the beginning. Don't even worry about a logo in the beginning. Sure, I went down the road of doing a logo and all the fun pieces and whatnot, but that wasn't the first thing. It might be the first thing you noticed, but there was a lot behind the scenes that happened. And that's when we think about branding and when we think about that, it comes down to the story and those pieces that really come together and how that plays.
Yeah. Well, and I think Simon Sinek had a really cool story in his book, Start With Why, that he called it the celery test. And basically, he explains, or, he tells a story about how this person's pushing a grocery cart. And in the grocery cart, they had a majority of like healthy types of foods, right? Everybody calm down. But there's like celery in there. There was meat, there's like whole foods, there's rice, there's grains, there's, fruits. And the general consensus as you walk by this person's grocery cart is that that person is probably caring about their health in some way. It was an external value based expression of some kind of internal belief. And I think that, when I consider what a brand is from a lesser applied perspective, it is just like inherently who you are, what you believe in, and the authentic nature of how you share that through the business that you know, build, or between the services that you deliver, or even the quality of the relationships that you're committed to, But I think the question becomes like, people can understand maybe some of that, or maybe they need a brand like values guiding session. I'm sure we can probably put something together for them. But like, when we talk about how does that lead into actually building a business, and we mentioned lead generation, like how does branding potentially impact lead gen? How does it make it easier? How does it make it harder? And I guess that's really the question I would have as a consumer.
Yeah. So for myself, and I guess I never I kind of get fell into my brand. And I'll talk about my DJing business for the sake of this example. But I got involved with a lot more of the wedding scene, the corporate scene with DJing, and so that is where I was like, oh, okay, I guess I gotta keep going to do weddings because that was my clientele that just kept reoccurring. Because essentially, you do a wedding, there's maybe an extra 80 to 100 people there, and that's if I'm able to get like one or two weddings from a wedding, I'm like, okay, that was a good wedding. But the interesting part, I was DJing for a company once, and they're saying like, yeah, I mean, your prices are a little high. Like our budget went down this year, but we asked every other DJ in the Scottsdale area, and they all were like had weird names like DJ Hammers with like Z or DJ Kill the Noise and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so some crazy names, and that's their brand, and that's great. I mean, that's great. They are DJing at the clubs, which is a lot of people's goals. And for me, I wasn't ever. I'm like my bedtime now, like 9, 10 o'clock. I couldn't do it anymore. But it's a very different audience that you're tailoring to, which also means a very different type of music to be played. And so they're like, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're a little out of our budget because it went down, but we wanted to work with you again just because you did great last year. And then two, yeah, your name is just Brandon Yamaguchi. And I'm like, oh, cool. I never thought that my simple name, DJ Yamaguchi or DJ, I don't, it's even right now, I still really have much like, oh yeah, I'm Brandon, a DJ, would, be a positive. And again, that is the people that I want to work with. Cause I'm like, I don't want to work with some girl that's like, has her phone on her head. That's on Snapchat. That's like, play X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, go sit down. But it's yeah, and that I felt like it's the benefit too, because now it's like I get reoccurring business from those type of audiences, because now it's word of mouth, which is my only source of marketing. I don't put any ads out. I put $0 in the ad spend, so everything has just been word of mouth. And talking about like building relationships in the last episode, that's been my bread and butter for everything. And I feel like the return is a little bit high, the is higher because it's someone else vouching for you. It's not having to um, hey, this is why you should hire me because I'm good. Well, do you have anything to back that up? So, yeah.
Great organic strategy. I think that, when we talk about different stages of business growth, I think that's, for people that don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars every month on something that may or may not work. Maybe they don't have the bandwidth to test, maybe, whatever that looks like. But I love the fact that, as someone that doesn't spend on ads, and I'm sure many of our listeners are probably in that boat, maybe just as many are looking for ad buyers. I think it's really important that people get the experience and do the things so they can actually feel out that brand. Like, do you have any, because you mentioned that you didn't intend on falling into the wedding scene, maybe you can explain how you started to discover your brand feel or your brand, experience based upon those early opportunities.
Yeah, and that's too where I even tell the couple when I'm working with them, I try to offer more than just DJing. I try to help them with their wedding coordination and their planning because I've worked with a ton of coordinators now, and it's unfortunate that I've worked with more bad coordinators than good ones, and so I'm like I don't want to have to deal with the potential of a bad one. So that's something that I offer now too, and working with them, and that's just that little extra going a little bit above and beyond working. And that it's on the well, I think the biggest reason is because I really want to be able to provide the best experience for the I hate using the word customer in this type of setting, but the clients, the friends I've made along the way, from beginning to end, and that is the thing where I think it's yeah, I think that's distinguished it the most. Oh, hey, Steve. The um, but it's yeah, and it's really for me. It's just being able to provide as much, or make sure that they are as have one of the better, hopefully one of the better days of their life. Start out on a good foot. And that was just something that I'm like, I actually really like this. I really like this environment. And I've done some other events where it is cool where I did like a USA Mexico soccer game, and it was cool to be able to say I've done a USA Mexico soccer game. And but if I was a reoccurring thing for me, it'd just be like, all right, I'm just the DJ here. It's not like I don't know who I'm really making an impact on, or changing someone's entire day. It's like, oh, okay, well the coordinator liked it and they'll probably hire me again, but it's not as fulfilling. And that's I think for me in a weird selfish way, it's like, oh, I like weddings because it makes me I get to help people and that fulfills me. So and hopefully the brand. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think that again, it sounds like there's a theme of you have to do things that maybe you weren't originally expecting, and like that expansion of that pressure helps you kind of figure out on a micro level what you probably want to figure out and like what you do enjoy. But Steve, like we just talked about organic brands like development. I'm very curious to see what the business, like the macro level of what that means to grow and scale a brand, like what's necessary for that when margins actually start to matter.
Yeah, it really comes down to understanding your ROI on your growth efforts. Everybody goes out there and I'm going to spend money to do a thing. And you have to set baselines. So you have to take a guess and jump off that cliff to begin with, no matter what. But you need to not blindly spend money continually, but you also have to put enough money in to actually get real data out. So Meta, Facebook, Instagram, let's take that because it's an easily accessible one for everybody. You can spend $3 a day and go create traffic for yourself 100%, but it might take you 60 days to get any meaningful data to understand if that traffic's converting, if they're engaging, if they're doing whatever it is that you want them to do, uh, which all of a sudden down the road can turn into $200. Now, $200 might be a lot or might be a little for you. You don't know, or I don't know. But when we're thinking through this, we want to understand what our efforts are doing and what that outcome should be based upon what we're spending. If you go and spend 2 hours walking down Main Street, can you get yourself a client instead of waiting 60 days and spending $200? And maybe you can't, and then it's good, or maybe $200 doesn't matter to you and 60 days is fine. So you want to understand all those components, but just putting ads out there and getting attention is a piece of it. It comes down to grow and scale. We've mentioned in other episodes the idea of leading a team, the idea of systems to onboard people, the idea of whether it's a setter or a salesperson, like all of that stuff starts to matter. I'm not saying they're bad or good. No, I'm generally indifferent. But if you want to truly, and I'll use the word scale as grow bigger than just yourself as a person, I'm making that assumption there. There's a lot that goes into it, and you shouldn't just blindly throw money and continue to grow. If you're bringing people in, spending a ton of money to do so, paying other coaches, paying salespeople, paying for systems, and that excess of people, and you've gone down this road of growth and scale, is making you no extra money. Why? But on top of it, do you even know if you're actually getting extra money or not? Because we don't have that data, which again, we'll talk about KPIs and all those things in another episode. But what I would say is make sure you know where you're going and what your targets, what your key performance indicators, your data should be on the other side of what you're doing, because that's going to be extremely important to produce whatever it is you're looking to produce.
Yeah. So like when it comes to lead gen and like branding, what does, as we wrap up here, what's something that people can implement around a branding uh, recommendation to generate leads that may be more warm or maybe more receptive to purchasing something? Throw it over to you first. You're on a little bit of time crunch.
So this is probably not going to be the favorite answer. But what I would say is you need to start building your audience and your attention significantly in advance of when you want to be able to ask them to do something or give them a call to action. Good example for me, I've been working on consistently posting and playing on social media for nearly a year, and I haven't asked any of those people to buy anything yet. But now, as hey, do you want to go do this thing? Overnight, I had 100 people go, yeah, I want some of this thing. I've spent on Facebook ads a total of $37 in the past week and a half to generate 120 leads, potential prospective buyers. Not because I did ads, but because I've spent time building the attention where I want people to go, and I've have built-in assets that all of a sudden makes things really valuable. Now, this isn't an overnight thing, and I realize, oh, Steve, I need to generate XYZ revenue by the end of the week. This isn't the plan for you, and we have to think about something different. But you need to start building the attention. You need to put the work in ahead of time and just become that person that they see. If they're not engaging with your stuff, they're not engaging whatsoever, it doesn't matter. I had people reach out on an offer that I made that never, ever engage on anything I do, but they're watching and they're seeing it. So you just got to grind it away and put that stuff out there.
Yeah, I love that. Brandon, how about you?
Yeah, and I totally agree with everything Steve just said too. I'm just now realizing, I guess, with how I've approached things and just the nature of DJing, especially after COVID. There's just been an influx of them, so everyone's kind of same thing with photographers. It's just everyone is a DJ or everyone's now a photographer, and so that's where I don't think I've ever had to put money into it or generate leads because I am my own social proof at this point where I don't need to go out and prove like, hey, take a chance on me with this ad. Here's actually, I got people vouching for me now instead. And so really that is, it's for myself. I guess what is that? It's not like old school marketing. I guess it's not, I know in a way, um, because it's not like photography. I can't just post my work online and be like, okay, well, you take good photos. I like you. I guess I could post like mixing and stuff on online, but everything can be also automated. So a lot of people, unfortunately, are using like Spotify or using programs to pre-mix things and kind of claim that it's live stuff, which I'll use. I'm not gonna lie, but I don't want to post that out there. And out and about and so I'm like, oh, do this. And I was like, actually, I can't. That was an edit I made. So, but with all that to be said, yeah, it's the for me, it's a snowball effect. It took time to build that up, and I think I took a course once that talked about how referrals are really a great way to generate leads, but they are harder to come by. But I think I'm at that point now where it's just become a snowball effect. I had no one to vouch for me. You do a gig here, do a gig there, and now it's like, oh, sorry, I'm booked already. So
Yeah. But and I think that that's so cool to see from a value-based expression, like, you and Steve obviously have very different experiences, and yours, I would say, is more micro and his is more macro. If yours is like, how do you generate awareness around who you are? And basically, when we talk about branding, it's a reputation. It's what are you known for in the space? The only way to be a reputation or to develop that is to do things and to take action and to get out there despite having maybe no branding packet, no colors, no logo, the stuff that's really just the frills and thrills, not the meat and potatoes of what it means to get out there and make a change, make an impact, and deliver on the thing that you inherently believe that most people need. And so, with all that to say, we appreciate everyone listening. Again, make sure you guys like and subscribe. The more you can help us by putting this visibility out, the better job that we can do, the more we can dedicate focus, time, resources. Eventually we'd love to put out a podcast every day that's value based that you guys would love. And, by you helping us get that out there, it's super helpful for us. So if there's anything that you guys want to hear from us, any support, please shoot us an email. We are more than happy to figure out how we can bring that value from the function of the podcast, the content, the topics that we talk about, even the events that we're planning on hosting here. So, with all that to say, thank you so much for being here. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next episode of Beyond the Pump. Outro.